Welcome to Simply Debbie Sue's Southern Whispers. Step into a world where front porches hold secrets, faith carries folks through the hardest days, and the mountains whisper stories only the heart can hear. I invite you into tender moments, gentle humor, and the kind of Southern warmth that feels just like home. Welcome back, friends, to episode 4 in the Henhouse Whisper Series. And if you have missed any of the other episodes, I have a special playlist called the Henhouse Whisper Series, and you can find those other episodes easy in that playlist. And the first episode was called the Henhouse Coop Chatter. The second episode was called Lullabelle and the Crowing Contest. And last week's episode, the third episode, was called Dolly Pearl and the Porch Gifts. So if you have missed any, just go back to that playlist and you can find them. So let's get into the introduction of this story. Friends, today's story shines a little spotlight on Clarence, our sweet, scatterbrained rooster who never means to save the day, but somehow always does. Clarence is the kind of rooster who trips over his own feet, chases bugs like they owe him money, and crows at shadows just to keep them in line. But every now and then, without even trying, he becomes the hero of the whole farm. So this story is called Clarence and the Fox Scare. The morning sun hadn't fully stretched across Cloverland Farm when Clarence began his daily routine, a routine that involved absolutely no awareness of danger, responsibility, or common sense. He strutted out of the coop with his chest puffed out, ready to greet the day like he was the king of the mountain. He spotted a beetle. Everything else ceased to exist. Clarence lunged forward with all the grace of a rolling pumpkin. He zigzagged left, tripped over a stick, crowed at the stick for tripping him, then resumed his pursuit with renewed determination. Miss Lullabelle watched him with dreamy eyes. "He's so brave," she whispered, fanning herself with the leaf. Henrietta snorted. "He's brave because he doesn't know what's going on." Dolly Pearl clucked softly. "Bless him. He tries." The hens were gathered near the coop, discussing the day's business, which mostly involved Henrietta May fussing about things that didn't need fussing, when a rustle came from the edge of the woods. Henrietta May froze. Her feathers puffed up like she'd been plugged into a socket. "Ladies," she whispered dramatically, "don't panic, but I smell danger." Miss Lullabelle gasped. "Is it heartbreak?" "No," Henrietta hissed. "It's a fox." The hens scattered like popcorn in a hot skillet. Dolly Pearl dove behind a bucket. Miss Lullabelle fainted into a patch of clover. Henrietta May stood tall, ready to defend her flock, even though she had no idea how. And Clarence didn't notice a thing. He was still chasing his beetle, zigging and zagging across the yard with all the grace of a confused toddler. The fox slinked closer, eyes locked on the hens. Its tail flicked low, its ears flattened, and its paws moved silently through the grass. Henrietta May puffed up her chest. "Stay calm, ladies. I'll handle this." But before she could take a single heroic step, Clarence tripped over a root. He let out a startled crow, loud, sharp, echoing across the ridge like a trumpet blast. The fox froze mid-step. Clarence froze mid-crow. The hens froze mid-panic. Clarence blinked confused. "Bug?" The fox, startled by the sudden explosion of noise, turned tail and ran straight back into the woods, kicking up leaves as it fled. Henrietta May's beak dropped open. He scared it off." Miss Lullabelle fluttered her eyelashes. "He saved us, my hero." Dolly Pearl waddled out from behind the bucket. "Clarence, sweetheart, you did it." Clarence looked up, bewildered. "Bug?" Henrietta May marched up to him, feathers fluffed with pride. "Clarence, you saved the whole coop. That crow of yours sent that fox running for the hills." Clarence puffed up proudly. "Bug?" Miss Lullabelle sighed dreamily. "He's modest." The hens gathered around him, clucking praise and admiration. Clarence strutted in a little circle, chest puffed out, convinced he had won a battle against a very large beetle. But the story didn't end there. Later that morning, the farm wife stepped outside with a basket of laundry. She noticed the hens gathered around Clarence like he was royalty. "Well, look at y'all," she laughed. "Clarence must have done something special today." Henrietta May nodded. "He saved us." Clarence crowed triumphantly, a loud, proud, slightly off-key crow that echoed across the yard. Miss Lullabelle swooned so dramatically she nearly fell off the porch steps. Dolly Pearl clapped her wings together like she was at a revival. Henrietta May rolled her eyes, but smiled anyway. Clarence strutted away, still searching for his beetle, unaware that he had become the hero of the day. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridge and the sky turned soft lavender, the hens gathered in the coop. Miss Lulabelle whispered romantic nonsense about Clarence's bravery. Dolly Pearl kept patting Clarence's wing, telling him how proud she was. Henrietta May gave a long speech about leadership under pressure, even though Clarence wasn't listening. Clarence fell asleep dreaming of the beetle he never caught. The hens fell asleep feeling safe, thanks to the rooster who didn't even know he'd saved them. So the reflection of this story is Clarence reminds us that sometimes bravery isn't planned, it just happens. He didn't set out to save the hens. He didn't even know a fox was nearby. But his startled crow, born from pure confusion, ended up protecting everyone he loved. His story teaches us that heroism doesn't always look polished or perfect. Sometimes it's messy, accidental, and a little silly, but it still matters. And sometimes the ones who seem the least aware end up making the biggest difference. I hope you'll come back next week for our final story in the Henhouse Whisper Series. May these stories that I have written wrap around you like a well-loved quilt. May they remind you that God is near, hope is steady, and joy often comes softly, like a whisper on a southern breeze.